Okay, I'm back today to finish up with the segment that I've been doing on oil infusions. I'm Pam Akins with The Weed in My Garden. The last time I did a video, I went on a long rant about my grandchildren and cards that I got from them. And this time, I wanted to tell you up front that we just went through a hurricane. I live in coastal Alabama, in Fairhope, Alabama, and Sweet Sally went right over our little community. So we still look a bit apocalyptic here, and over the past couple of weeks I haven't done any kind of content whatsoever. We've been cleaning up and helping our neighbors clean up, but you know, we're all thankful here. I don't think there were any deaths. Most of the destruction that was really horrific happened around the coast with the storm surge, and here in our community we had like massive amounts of rain. So it uprooted a huge amount of old trees. One of which is laying in my front yard right now, and eventually we will be having the huge root ball and the rest of the tree removed for FEMA to come through and pick up. And I have to say that having that tree in my yard is so much better than having it laying on my roof. And many people did have that happen, including my daughter. So what that has meant for me is that my husband has been laughing at me because I've been going off on another like intense foraging jag, because what we have here in Alabama are pine trees, lots of pine trees, and pine trees are shallow rooted, so they fall over in storms. And what do pine trees have? They have pine rosin. So I've been sneaking around in people's yards and on the roads and digging out pine rosin to make salve, which I'm doing a whole video on that. But everybody already thinks I'm creepy here in my neighborhood. I've already had one of my neighbors put up a no trespassing sign just for me, even though I personally didn't think I was trespassing, but apparently she did. So you do have to be careful with those sorts of things when you're out foraging. And these old trees are laying on the side of the road, so I was feeling really bad. Some of them, you know, some of the pine trees that we have here can live to be 300 years old. And today there was one that was this wide, from right here back. I don't know how long that is, but I'd say 4 or 5 feet in diameter that had fallen in this guy's yard. However, I did discover a large reservoir of pine rosin that I'm going to go back and collect real soon, and I'll show you how to do that. So that was my rant for today. My follow-up, my instructional video, is going to be on making warm oil infusions, and from that I'm going to show you how to make salves. I'm going to do a quick review just for those of you who didn't get the first one. And what we're going to be doing with any infusion, whether it be a cold infusion or a warm infusion, is we are extracting the medicinal properties of whatever herb or plant material that we're using into some form of an oil. I reviewed with y'all my favorite kind of oil is olive oil, and one of the reasons is because it doesn't go rancid quite as fast as some of the others. It's also very available, and I've always used olive oil soap and other olive oil skincare products for as long as I can remember. I just love the way it makes your skin feels. So that's one of the reasons why I do that. Now, what you're looking at here is a cold infusion that I made on the 8th of September. It is yarrow and eucalyptus. I have had this sitting on my windowsill some in the sun, but mostly I've had it in a closet. One of the ways that you can tell when your oil infusion is done is that it will start changing color. Usually it'll get darker, and it will also take on the smell of the herb or the plant material that you're using. The longer that you leave it in there, possibly the more medicinal properties that it extracts from the plant material. But I think the main thing that you need to be aware of is that you can use either dry or fresh material. If you use fresh material, then you need to be very careful about the moisture content, because the way this can fail most of the time is the oil will go rancid, and the oil will go rancid if there's water associated with it. It can also mold, and that would happen in the event that your plant material is not underneath the oil properly. Whoop. A lot of light in here today, and I really don't care because we've had a lot of gray days lately. So you see how nothing's floating on the top. What I'll do is, of course, I label it, not just to show what it is, but show how long it's been there. And I will constantly check to make sure that my plant material is underneath the oil. There we go. You know, this is just trying to make me look like I can't screw on the lid. There we go. And I like to check the oils about once a week, just to make sure that nothing is awry. If it has some molding on the top, it's generally from the plant material sticking above the oil. Smell of it, examine it, and this one looks great. I'll be making a salve out of this. So this is basically a cold oil infusion method. Put your material in a jar, clean jar, dry jar, cover it with some form of oil, seal it, put it either in the sunshine or in a closet. I usually put it in a pantry that I have specifically for these. Cold infusion. Okay, now what we're going to do today is I'm going to explain to you warm infusion. Now, what I like about oil infusion is that it's fast. So if I'm going to make something up that day or the next day, I'll make a warm oil infusion. And basically what you're doing is taking the plant material, fresh or dry, and you're covering it with oil. Now the main thing that you have to be careful of in this situation is not only moisture content, but you have to be careful of heat. The heat cannot scorch it, and I've also read that over 120 degrees when you're making these oils will start to destroy some of the medicinal properties and some of the plant material. So I try to go low and slow. That is my whole method for making these oils. So in doing so, I started thinking about several different methods. One method is, of course, putting it on your stovetop in a pan, turning it on very low, watching it, stirring it, etc. A lot of people will put them in their crock pot. So I started thinking about my crock pot and how sometimes it can get out of control as far as the heat goes, even on the warm setting. So I decided to do a little test. I went out in very nerdy fashion, bought a thermometer, and most of this was just for you because, and for my own information, that's true, but I don't necessarily follow real hardcore strict rules with these, but you don't want to lose your medicinal properties. Why go through the trouble if that's what you're going to do? So I decided to use my Instapot. I felt like with it, I could control the temperature so much better. And what I did initially is I made a water bath in the Instapot, and I put a jar like this in it with my plant material and my oil. And I left it inside, and then I tested it. I tested the oil and the temperature of the water over a 48-hour period. And I found that this bad boy holds the temperature right on target. So in my Instapot, I have a warm setting. And then I realized I have a custom warm. So I actually can dial in 120 degrees on this thing, and it will hold it for whatever time frame that I want. Now, I think our grandmas and their grandmas, they didn't have that. They either did it on their stove, or they did it inside their oven, or they did it on a wood stove, or they did it in the sunshine, which here in Alabama, the sun gets very hot, and I would guarantee you that on some days it's hotter inside an oil infusion sitting in the sun than 120 degrees, without a doubt. So what I liked about the Instapot is that a person such as myself that's pretty ADD, has 18 projects going on at one time, I can put it in there and be assured that it's not going to burn, it's not going to go over a certain temperature. And if I forget about it, which I commonly do, it's gonna be okay. I can also put the timer on it. So I would recommend this if you're a person like myself. If you're a purist, you can put your oil and you can put your plant material. You can turn your oven on. You can heat it up to maybe 200 like you do with yogurt, and then turn it off. Leave the light on, put your material in there, and you leave it until you deem it done. What I don't like about doing a stovetop is that it could burn. You know, you just don't have as much control over that, but some people do it that way very successfully. So I'm going to show you my Instant Pot right now and give you an idea of what that looks like. Okay, so here's my Instant Pot, or Instant Pot. And you can see that I have it set on a warm setting here. Right now I have it on low, which I have decided is 135 degrees. But if I want to set it on a custom setting, I can do that at 120. I'm warming it up right now. I haven't had this running. But what I have in here are elder flowers, elder leaves, and olive oil, which I'm going to make a salve that is very medicinal for the elderly. Isn't that ironic? Especially for the thin skin that starts developing on your hands and your arms, much like what I already have at my age. And I also have parents who develop tears in their skin, and I'm making this for them. So this is how that works. You see there's no boiling really. There's just low and slow heat. I could probably add more oil to this if I want. If I had it in a glass jar, and it was sticking above it, I would add more oil to make sure all that plant material was underneath it, but it's not necessary at this point. Okay, so when I deem this ready, which will be when it turns dark, sometimes the plant material will lose a little bit of their stiffness, and you can tell that the internal cells of the plant material is breaking down and releasing some of its properties. Then I will claim it is done. And then comes the next part, which I'll show you now. Okay, so this is my setup for most of the material that I drain, or strain, I should say, of my oil infusions, whether they be warm or cold. A canning funnel. I use this for so many things, but you got the wide mouth at the bottom. It fits right in your jar just perfectly. And then you have to have something to put on top of it. You can use cheesecloth. Sometimes if the material is really fine, I will use a coffee filter, but that takes forever. But if you really don't want any residue in the bottom of it, that's the way to do it. And then I discovered this little trick after I dumped about, I don't know, an entire content's worth of oil down into the jar, the table, and everything else. So now I use these awesome little clips to hold my bag, and this is a storage bag for vegetables. My daughter sent me a bunch of them, and I find that this works really well with material that is not going to be very fine. It drains through there really fast. This is just a no-brainer. You just pour your oil through the strainer like so. And since this is just a demonstration, I'm not going to do the whole thing. But here you have your beautiful infused oil. It smells wonderful. Do y'all remember, I think it was Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory, where they had something called Smell-O-Vision? I've often wanted that because when you work with herbs, the smell is just, it's just one of the most important factors and beneficial factors with herbs is the smell. But we don't have Smell-O-Vision, so you're just going to have to take my word for it. Now, what I do with this oil after it's been strained is I label it and I put a date on it. I put the date, that I strained it, and Usually it still has a date on it from where I started it. And then I'll put this in a dark, cool place. I like to use these up pretty fast. They can go rancid, so I don't make a lot of oil at one time. You saw we probably have about maybe two of these pints from this. And from this quantity of oil, I can get all the salve that I can use and that my family can use in a winter time, especially since I make a wide variety of them. But if you're going to do this to sell, maybe at the farmer's market or give away for Christmas presents, you could certainly make a large quantity of them. Just be aware that the longer that it sits out in your pantry, the longer it has an opportunity to go bad, and that you might even consider refrigerating it at some point. Most all of your products that you buy commercially have some sort of preservative in them, and that's why you want to make your own stuff, is because you don't want that stuff on your skin. And the downside of that is they do have a shelf life, so just be aware of that. So just in review, a cold infusion involves sitting the material and the oil up for usually 6 to 8 weeks. It can be shorter, it can be longer. Since we have the wide world of Google, you can search what sort of plant material that you like using or that you want to use, and see recommendations from a vast array of herbalists that are online. If you're making a warm infusion, some people infuse them in 2 to 4 hours. I usually go very low and slow. I try to control it, and I do it anywhere from 24 to 48 hours. I kind of do something called eyeballing it, and when I feel like it has infused to the strength that I like using it, then I will strain it, and then I will make it into either a lotion or elixir, or I use it just as an herbal oil. Now, herbal oils totally can be used on your body, and a lot of what I make or am making right now is for that purpose, either lotions or salve or oils to be used on your body. But they're also very edible, and you can cook with them. And I love infusing rosemary and garlic into olive oil for cooking. So don't forget that. I mean, that's really easy to do. It also makes a really beautiful and nice gift if you have people in your family who like to cook. So that's all for today. I hope I've clearly explained to you cold and warm infusions. And now I'm going to take some of my oils and I'm going to make them into a salve, which is going to be another video. If you have any questions, please leave comments below, and I'll be happy to get back with you and help you any way I can. Thanks so much.